is Gregory Koberger. I'm a designer and developer, and I currently live in San Francisco, California. Currently doing freelancing half time and then kind of working on my own startup the other half of the time. So for freelancing, I'm working with kind of a wide range of clients. So it's a bunch of like VC firms out here, a bunch of startups, the Warriors, the basketball team. So it's kind of like a huge range of stuff, doing both programming and design. And then for my own startup, I'm doing a tool kind of targeted at developers. So the upsides are kind of the obvious ones, which is freedom, being able to kind of work from wherever. A big one that I really liked is that being able to work on a lot of different things, meaning that, companies are great and you definitely should work at a company, I think, for at least a few years. But it came to the point where I think at any company you get to the point where you kind of stop learning as fast. I mean, you're always going to learn no matter how long you're at someplace, but you kind of stop learning at the rate that you were. It's kind of been great to kind of do freelancing because instead of working on one project for 2 years, every few weeks I work on something new. So kind of the rate that I've started learning has been really accelerated. And I learned a ton while at Mozilla, and I definitely totally think that people should work at a company because I learned from people. I got to work with awesome people. I got to learn how things should be done and how things are at companies. However, being able to work on kind of a new design every few weeks or try a different programming language and stuff like that has actually been really great. As far as the bad things, there's two big ones that come to mind. The first one is kind of, I don't want to say loneliness, but kind of that lack of feeling of like working with a team. It kind of, even though I'm working on the same stuff, just being kind of a hired mercenary is not, you just don't get that same like feeling of like everyone working toward a common goal. It's kind of, you're just showing up and whether you're working from an office or from home, you're kind of just showing up and doing it for a paycheck. And that's fine. And I don't mind doing it. I get to work with a lot of awesome people and it works fine. But it kind of is, I've gotten this feedback from a lot of people that have also done freelancing that I've talked to, is that you just kind of, you no longer have like that family feeling that you do, like a camaraderie or something that you have with coworkers. So that's kind of been the worst thing that I've had so far. And the other thing that's been bad is that freelancing is kind of an ebb and a flow. And like going into it, which is why you charge a lot more for freelancing. So, obviously my hourly rate is much higher than I would have if I was a salaried employee. But the reason is because I can go 2 months without getting work or 3 months. Whereas other times I, get so much work that I don't know what to do with it. I have to turn work down, and there's no way to predict it. And as you do it longer, you kind of get, more referrals and you get more contacts, and kind of that like the downward spiral doesn't happen nearly as much. There's gonna be downsides no matter what, and I could definitely enjoy working like this because I get to work with awesome people. I get to work with a lot of different awesome people. I get to work on projects that are fun to me, and I get to work from where. Phileas Fogg is the main character in Around the World in 80 Days, which is where the name came from. How can we attract really good people and do so in a way that we're not giving them insane amounts of money just because we're a startup and we had no money? I took a step back and thought about like what would convince me to work in a company. Not money, clearly you need money to live. Clearly you need certain perks, but like health insurance, things like that. But travel was one of those things that I kind of thought about as something that a big company cannot offer. So it's not like Google could see that it's working and all of a sudden be like, okay, the whole company's going to start traveling. And it's something that I felt that people kind of would want to do, and kind of they value experiences often at least as much as money, if not over. The point of Phileas and Fogg was we wanted to start building a company while traveling. So we hired 4 people inclusive. We went to Costa Rica for a few months, for 80 days, to kind of go with the Jules Verne theme, and spent 80 days in Costa Rica living in this gigantic mansion, which it was huge, and it was much cheaper than rent in San Francisco even. We were like overlooking the beach. Yeah, that's kind of the basic premise behind it, which is basically how can you steal away good talent from these other, how can you set yourself apart from these other companies without completely breaking the bank, but more so making people happy as well. The goal would just be to kind of spend 3 months, pick a random country, pay for housing, pay for food, pay, we're calling it a stipend for legal reasons and other reasons. And rather than telling people to work on stuff, kind of just getting a bunch of smart people in a room someplace that's not in the US and kind of combine experience with time and introductions and all that. So I think it's not the most scalable thing ever, in the sense that you can't have a gigantic company traveling around the world. But I think that it's very easy for both companies to do and for people just to do on their own. It's just been really great to kind of travel, because my biggest fear was waking up one day and be 35 or something and look back and be like, holy crap, I did nothing. I worked at a bunch of failed startups, worked 90 hours a week, and didn't get to do what I wanted to do, which was, travel, have fun with people, ubiquitous Wi-Fi, ubiquitous internet. Even if there is no Wi-Fi, it's so easy to get satellite internet for relatively cheap that you can work from wherever. I think people in their 20s want to travel, and rather than either doing it for a week or 2 weeks on vacation and saving up for their entire year, I think it can totally become something people do for 3, 6, 9 months. And the kind of people who travel, we found, are kind of the people that we wanted to hire, which is they weren't boring, they were kind of excited, they wanted to try new things, and it was kind of like a really good selection bias. I think for companies who are looking for these really good people, it's kind of become a fight where you want someone who's awesome and who's really exciting and stuff like that, but you want them to do it in the office for 60 hours a week. And that's not incredibly realistic. There's a lot of companies out here that kind of don't go the full, like, hey, everyone travel wherever you want. But there's a few companies out here that have started doing things like just renting a house for about a month at a time, and they get like a chef and a personal trainer and stuff like that. And every month they just pick a new country and get a place with like 20 rooms or 10 rooms or something. And they just make it so that anyone in the company who wants can kind of go there. And I think that's kind of cool, because that's kind of a happy medium where everyone's not traveling all over and the whole company's not traveling, but each individual person gets to travel around and meet other people, people from the company that they normally would have met, and get to do cool things. So I think that's kind of a more scalable way of doing it. One of the most important things that I give when kind of younger people asking for advice is to definitely work at a big company. It doesn't have to be a gigantic, 50,000 person company, maybe big as 100 people or 200 people. And if it happens to have kind of a big-ish name that people have heard of, that's good as well. Kind of having that byline is really nice. Being able to say, hey, I'm Greg from, I used to work at Google. It kind of instantly gives you a little bit of credibility, for better or for worse. But it gives you a little bit of credibility as opposed to being like, hey, I'm Greg, and I worked for myself the entire time. So I think it gives you a little bit of credibility, but more so than that, I think you kind of learn a lot. And even though I think it's one of those things where you kind of need to know the rules before you can break them, which is, even if you don't want to do it long term, I think working at a big company for at least a year or two is really great, because you learn a lot of stuff that you normally wouldn't. My 2 things I'm going to go with, which is 1, definitely get a job someplace, learn how things work, and 2 is, once you kind of get the hang of things, leave and at least spend a few years traveling around, and if you can.
Wow.